This is Amy Chan from CakeDecoratingSchool.com, and if you like cake decorating, you are in the right place. Thanks for checking out this 3D sunflower cake video. In this video, we're going to show you how to make this lovely little design step by step. So we'll cover making your colors, the bags and tips we're going to use, the techniques we're going to use to create these wonderful, vibrant little sunflowers, and how you use those to build your blossoms. We're going to make some large sunflowers on our flower nail, and then we're going to place those on our cake and work on finishing our design. Let's start making our colors. We're going to use a simple or American style buttercream for all of our colors, and we're going to use liquid gel food coloring. We're going to use several shades. We have violet, neon bright pink, royal blue, coal black, sunset orange, lemon yellow, and finally, some buckeye brown. The first shade that we're going to make, we're going to use the violet, pink, and just a little bit of that brown, and we're going to make a nice light mauve color for the background of our cake. So I just have a little bit of each squeezed out onto the lid of a container, so I can just use a toothpick to really control that amount. I'm just going to start with a few nice specks of that violet, and then follow it up with just a couple of that pink. And then we want to make it just a touch dusty, so just a little bit of that brown. And we'll mix it around and see what we get. I want it to be a nice light color. I don't want it to be too strong. I want it just to provide a nice backdrop and a contrasting color for those great greens, yellows, and browns that I'm going to make to kind of pop off of. And we're getting a nice kind of dusty amethyst shade, so I just want to punch it up a tiny bit. So a little more purple, some more pink, just a little heavier on that pink, and just a touch of brown. This is almost there. I just want a little more intensity. I think just a little more purple will do it. I always like to start light with my colors. Start with less than you think you need. And that's a great way to go because you can just keep adding more and tweaking it, shifting the color this way and that way until you get it where you want it to be. And we have a nice kind of light, dusty purple shade that I think is going to read really well for the background of our cake and really provide that nice backdrop for those colors to punch off of. So we want to make two shades of yellow for this cake. One we want to make lighter and have a more lemony feel to it, and another one a little more kind of mustard golden brown. So I'm just going to start with a tiny bit of lemon. And I'm going to go pretty light with this. I don't want it to be too intense, and I'm just going to give it a super tiny little fleck of that brown. I just want it to read as a nice shade of yellow and be just a touch muted. So almost have like a nice buttery feel to it, which I think that's getting there. I think I just want it to be just a little more intense. And that's beautiful. You can see it's a nice kind of buttery shade of yellow, has just that hint of brown in it that kind of dulls the color. It's going to make everything go together. For our second shade of yellow, I've added some orange over here, and we're going to add that to give it a bit more of an egg feel, and we're going to go a little heavier on the brown as well, and that's going to give it a nice kind of golden I'm gonna say that kind of like harvest yellow color that used to be really popular for appliances is kind of what we're going for. So that nice kind of mustardy golden brown color, or golden yellow, sorry. And we want it to be just a little more intense than the last color we made. And you can see just adding that orange gives your yellow a more egg yolk kind of vibe to it. So it's a great way to make egg yellow without actually buying the coloring. So I like the way this is going. I'm just gonna pump it up a little bit more and add some more of each. Just a touch of that orange. I think go just a little heavier on the brown. Give it that real golden colored vibe. And I think that's gonna be fantastic. It's a nice kind of slightly muted shade. It's got that wonderful kind of egg yolk harvest gold vibe to it, so it's gonna be just perfect. The next color we're gonna make is gonna be our brown. And for this one, I'm actually gonna use drops. So I'm gonna pull over my Buckeye Brown, just give it 2 drops of that. And then I'm gonna pull over my black because I want my sunflowers to have nice dark centers. And I'm just gonna give it a drop of that black as well. We'll mix it around and see where we are in terms of intensity, but I want nice, beautiful dark centers on these sunflowers. And I think that's gonna be wonderful. You can see that gives us a lovely rich brown. As that color develops, it's really gonna deepen. It's gonna look fantastic. I'm just gonna take about half of this, push it over to one side, and I'm gonna add just a little more black to that, and mix it around. And this is gonna give me 2 shades of that brown in the same bowl really quickly, and then I can just kind of loosely mix them together and fold it into the bag. And it's gonna give the sunflower centers, those seeds, a nice kind of varied appearance to it. So you can see that gives us one slightly lighter, one slightly darker shade of brown. So my final color is going to be my green, and I've already got my yellow and brown out. I've just squeezed out a little bit of that royal blue as well, and I want to go heavier on my yellow because I want it to trend towards that yellow, light on the amount of blue, and then just a little bit of that brown because I want it to be kind of a nice mossy shade, and that way it'll kind of go with everything else that I'm making. And I like where this color is headed. I'm just gonna up the intensity some. I think that's going to be nice, but I want to maybe make it just a little bit more blue, just to shift the balance since we have a lot of yellow in those flowers. And I want it to pop against the 2 yellows that we made for our sunflowers. There we go. So that's going to give it a really nice feel. You can see we've got that nice lovely mossy green color. So let's talk about the bags and tips we're going to use for this project. We're going to use 4 12-inch decorating bags. I have 2 fitted with couplers and 2 without. My first bag with a coupler I've used for my green, and you can see I've got a number 12 tip on there. And I'm also going to use it with a number 7, which is why we have that coupler on there, so we can change it. So 2 round tips, both large sizes. You just want a nice difference between the 2. The second one that I have a coupler on has my 2 shades of brown in it. And you can see I just swirled them together lightly and loaded them into that bag. So it gets a nice kind of blend and mix, meaning all my seeds will have a little bit of subtle variation to them and none of them will be the same. I have a number 5 tip on there right now, so it's a smaller round one. And I also have a 104 tip, and I'm going to use this to pipe a nice flat disc to make up the base and the support for those large sunflowers. My 2 bags without couplers I'm using for my yellow. I have a number 5 that has my lighter shade of yellow in it, and a number 352, so it's one of those V-shaped leaf tips, and I'm actually going to use this to create petals, and this one has that kind of harvest gold, kind of golden yellow color in it. So those are our 4 bags and the tips that we're going to use with them. So let's talk about the tips and techniques we're going to use for the different parts of our sunflowers. So the yellow colors, we have 2 tips. We're going to use a 352 and a number 5. The 352 is going to make kind of fatter, bigger petals in this darker color. And we're going to do what we would normally do when we make a leaf, hold it at a 45-degree angle, touch the surface with one of those points, squeeze, and pull. And you can see that makes a nice little leaf shape. So what we want to do is just speed it up so that there's less of that fat build up at the bottom. So almost as soon as I start squeezing, I'm going to pull. And that's going to give me a more elongated shape, which you can see there, right? It gives us a nice, more tapered, narrow effect. It's got those great shape for sunflower petals. So if you hold too long, they'll be fatter at the bases. Just remember, as soon as you start squeezing, pull immediately, right? So that you get that nice longer shape. For our number 5, this is going to almost be like piping lines. We're going to do the same thing where we hold it at a 45-degree angle. We're going to give it a squeeze and we're going to pull just like we would with our leaf tip. So rather than letting our line drop into place and putting a finished end on it, we're going to use that motion of pulling away quickly to end that stream of frosting and give it a little kind of almost uncontrolled flick. It's going to make some nice natural looking petals, and what would normally be considered a mistake is going to work in our favor this time to make something really beautiful. So we're going to pull and just pull away, and that's going to give us some spikes, right? So you can see those. And as we work on our cake, we can curve those spikes as well. So we can pull them to one direction or the other. And you can see that very quickly gives us a more natural looking feel to them. So they don't all have to be stick straight and little toy soldiers. You can kind of curl them up, curl them back to one side to the other, and it's going to give our flowers a nice natural soft feel. They'll have 2 tones of petals, 2 thicknesses, so some will be skinnier and some will be fatter, some will be different colors, and it's going to give us some nice motion and movement, which will be lovely for the finished product. So finally, for the centers of these are just going to be a series of little dots. So we really just want to practice our dots. For dots, we want to be straight up and down, right? You want to be right above the surface. If you're touching, you're going to impede the flow of your frosting. So just high enough that it can come out. Stop when you've formed a full dot and just circle it around and kind of shave off the top. And this should give you a nice, beautiful little rounded dot. Let me see if I can get it to focus there. There we go. So it'll give you a nice, beautiful little dot. We're going to do a whole bunch of those to make up the centers of our flowers. So let's talk about how we use those techniques to build our blossoms. So the first thing that we're going to do is, if we're working on our flower nail and we're piping some full open sunflowers, we're going to pipe a nice flat disc. So we're basically going to hold the bag so that the opening of the tip is flat against the surface. We're going to spin that nail, and that's just going to make a nice little brown circle in the middle with our 104 tip. That's going to give us a surface that we can attach all those petals to and then pipe those dots on top of to give us a nice mounded center, but it also gives us a nice secure support for underneath that's all connected together, so you're going to have really stable flowers that are going to be easy to transfer onto your cake. We're going to pipe some actual buds and some little kind of half open ones directly on the cake as well. But we want to do these on our flower nail so we get a nice, beautiful, clean presentation, and they're really easy to move over and place onto that cake. right? So once we have that center down, we're gonna go around the edges and pipe the petals. I'll start with my number 352, pipe some big ones, and then I'll pipe maybe a few smaller ones with that 352, and then go in with that 5 and pipe some just kind of wild little lines there, just to give it some movement and feel and some variation in the color. And then we'll finish it up by doing a series of concentric circles. Start around the outside edge, right near the edges of your petals, and just work your way in until you've filled up that whole center area with those beautiful brown dots. So we're gonna start piping some sunflowers, and we're gonna start with the 104 tip on our brown. And like we talked about before, we're just gonna line it up so the fat end is in the center, skinny end is facing out. It's just right there flat on the surface of our flower nail, and we are just gonna squeeze and rotate, and this is just gonna give us a nice, beautiful disc in the center, and it's giving us a place to not only, it gives us a little round circle to kind of act as a guide, but also a place to build up our center on, and a nice support, making these flowers easy to move around. So we're then gonna take our 352 tip with our yellow and start working around, and we're just gonna pull some big, beautiful, skinny petals straight out. They don't all have to be the same size, so I'm just using nice, light, gentle pressure to get a nice flower petal shape. And it's great if some of them kind of flop over and some of them kind of point up. That's gonna be beautiful. I just wanna make sure that they're connecting with that center, right? So then I can go around for a second round, and I'm just gonna go right on top of these. And I can even go a little out from that brown and pull some shorter ones. And these will go in between, and you can see it kind of stand up. And that's gonna start to give these flowers some dimension and really kind of open them up. So you can see from the side, some of those petals are laying flat, some of them are kind of going up at the angle, and they also all have that nice, beautiful tapered shape. I'm gonna take my yellow with my number 5, and I'm just gonna come in and pull some cute little petals. And you can see that adds a little extra color. You can do some of them on top of that dark yellow, some of them underneath. Just pull them out wherever you feel like it needs a little color and a little drama. Looking beautiful. We're going to change the tip on our brown back to our number 5. And then we're going to start with our dots. And I'm going to go around the outside edge first and then work my way in. And this is really going to help to join everything together. It's going to give my centers a nice, beautiful look to them, so you have all those kind of individual seeds. And just turn as you need to. And keep working until you have that entire area filled. And you can see that gives us a beautiful look to those lovely sunflowers. If you need to add any more little yellow petals, sometimes I like to pipe 1 or 2 so that they're kind of curving over that center, and some that are just kind of pulling out. Every once in a while I disturb them and I just want to go back and add in 1 or 2 more. But that gives me a lovely, beautiful sunflower, and they should be really easy to handle and place on our cake. So we have our little 4-inch round cake. iced with white buttercream, and it's nice and firm. It's been in the fridge for a while, so it's had time to set up. And we're just gonna go over the top of this with a nice light thin layer of our purple. So I'm just gonna start with the top, work this out. And I like doing my colored buttercreams on the outside of my cake in a nice thin layer like this. That way it creates the look almost like fondant, and people can kind of eat around that food coloring if they want. But if this is a little too advanced for you, you can always just go right ahead, make more of that purple, and ice your cake with it. So just do whatever works best for you. You can see I worked on the top first and got a nice smooth layer. And once that was nice and even, I went ahead and just worked on those sides. And just keep going around, applying that color until you get a nice even coat. Once I go over it with my spatula, and it's kind of almost there, I like to give it a pass with my bowl scraper and my bench scraper. So I'm just gonna take this, just gently glide it along the surface. It's a really quick way to even it out. And pick up any excess. Once that's even, it's easy to see where I've got any thin spots that I need to fill in still. Just give it a quick check. And make sure none of that white is showing through. And then I'll give it a pass with my bench scraper since it's a really nice sharp right angle. Just rest it right on the surface of that presentation board. And just let it really square up and sharpen those lines on the sides. And then I can quickly use my spatula just to gently level off that top. I like to start at the back and pull towards myself. Just a nice, gentle sweeping motion, giving that blade just a slight angle. It'll easily pick up that buildup, sweep it across the top, allowing you to remove excess frosting and make a nice level surface. And if you need to, you can just repeat until you get the look that you want. And sometimes this goes so well the first round that that's all it takes, but sometimes it might take a second round. If things start to get warm while you're working, pop it in the fridge, let it chill up, and then go over it again. You'll find it'll be much easier to work with. So our sunflowers are in the refrigerator getting chilly so that they'll be easy to handle, and we're going to start working on our cake. We're going to do some piping on the sides and make some just little buds and some kind of half open blossoms that are hanging over, and then we're going to leave some spots up top for those big sunflowers. So I just want to go ahead and just gently mark my cake for where I'm going to put my stems, and I kind of want to do maybe like little trios and doubles of stems, and I just want to have a good idea of where I want to put those. So I'm just giving it a nice little score on there, a little line, just to give me a little guide. And those sunflowers are pretty big, so I'm probably just going to get 3 on there. So I just kind of want to mark those little spots for myself, just get a good idea of where I'm going to put them, and then work from there. That way they're kind of equally spaced. And 3. And it'll be a nice look. They won't be too close together. would be fantastic. So I've got my number 12 tip on my green, and I'm going to start making some kind of fat stems. And I'm just going to pull from the bottom up, and I want to go a little slower as I get to the end of my line to make that stem a little fatter, so it has that kind of look of a sunflower stem, because they're kind of really thick and chunky and they get a little fat at the end. So I'm just going to go along here, let my green come out. You'll notice I've got that bag at a nice 45-degree angle, right? So nice little, you can see it kind of just hung out there for a little bit longer at the end, and that gives you a nice fat stem. But we're just holding that bag at a 45-degree angle to the cake and just sliding it along the surface. So just graze the bottom of that tip along the surface, and that'll help you get nice, even, smooth lines, right? Without impeding the flow of frosting or getting anything that's wiggly or bumpy. So then I'm going to do some little ones off to the sides. And if you want to, for some of the smaller ones, you can even use your number 5 tip. Important note, buttercream is always going to have air bubbles, so occasionally you're going to get a little hiccup like that. Don't sweat it, don't panic, especially if your cake is cold. It's really easy to remove them. And just keep going. So I'm just going to join up with that line. And you can see, beautiful. So don't worry too much about mistakes. They're no big deal. And I've got one coming off that way. And I like the way that looks. It's going to be beautiful. So I'm just going to keep going, working on my cake. Don't be afraid to put some of them closer together and put some distance between others as well. Also going to do some kind of hanging over, because sometimes those blossoms kind of slump over just a little bit. So beautiful. We've got all those stems on and we're ready to start creating some blossoms. So you just want to pick some of them we want to do kind of like half open, and some of them we want to create them looking more like they're buds and they haven't started open yet. So we're going to pick up our yellow bags. And I think I'm going to go with making a little half open one over here. And I'm going to start, and I'm just going to imagine that the blossom is right there. And I'm going to do a row of petals. So if you need to, just make a little arc with your toothpick so you can follow along, that are going to be the ones in the back. I'm going to do a center, and then I'm going to do another row of petals overlapping like that. So it looks like kind of maybe a half open one, or one that's starting to open that is facing upwards, right? Just make sure that my yellow is coming out nicely. So I'm just going to go over here and start there. Just a nice little row of petals. Get the ones on the end. And these are smaller than the ones that I pulled for my actual large open flowers. And then I'm just going to follow along there and do a nice little series of dots for my center. And if you start to cover up the green, don't worry about it. That's actually going to look great. You can add some small petals as well with your number 5 and that lighter yellow color on the back if you want, or you can leave it in just that dark shade. That's up to you. And then we're going to do the same thing on the front. We're going to pull a row of petals, same direction, across the top. So it's going to go over top of that brown and cover it up just a little bit. I'm going to change the angle so hopefully it's good for you all to see. And just pull over top. So start at the edge of that buildup of brown and pull across it. And you can see we get the look of a nice open sunflower. And that little one got away from me, so we'll just move it and pipe another one in there. There we go. And then just go in with our yellow. Add some more of those little wild petals. And pull them across. Like so. And you can see you have that look of a nice, beautiful sunflower that's not quite open yet. I'm going to change the tip on my green to my other number 5. Excuse me, sorry, that one's a number 7. But you could use the number 5 or a number 7. Just a smaller round tip will do. And we're going to just make some little spikes here at the bottom. So that's going to be those little sepals on the bottom of your sunflower. Just to give it a nice little look there, like it's just started to open up. So beautiful. So we have that little bit of green hanging off at the bottom. We've got those nice thick chunky stems. It's looking fantastic. I'm going to go over here and do a nice little bud. And so I want it to kind of hang down a little bit, look really heavy. I'm just going to go really small with this. Use my dark buttercream. Just pipe 3 of those. And then I'm going to do a nice little large dot with that brown. Really kind of build it up a little bit so it has just a little bit of depth to it. And then I'm going to pull over top of it so you're almost completely enclosing that brown in those darker petals. So I just want very, very little of it showing through. And you can see it's kind of hanging over, and that gives us more of the look of a closed bud. And if you want it to look even more closed, you can just pull those petals even more towards the center so it looks like it hasn't opened up at all yet. And then I'm just going to pull some little sepals. And I like if they kind of hang down a tiny bit. So let's pull our hard blossoms that we piped, those big open ones, out of the refrigerator and place one on top. So we've got our large blossoms out, and I'm just gonna kind of prepare the surface for it because I wanna put it on this cake at kind of an angle. So I want it to look like it's kind of growing over the top. So I'm just gonna make a little bit of an oval shape there. And then I'm gonna pull some great big, kind of long, dangly little sepals out from underneath. They can be big and dramatic. We're essentially just giving these flowers a resting place. So we're pulling some more of those spike-like petals, just like we did before. Make them nice and big. If you end up being a little too short on some of these and they don't show from underneath, you can always go back and add them underneath. But essentially this gives us a nice resting spot for that flower. And I just want to pick my favorite blossom, and they should be easy to handle. If they're not, you can use flower lifter or spatula, whatever works for you. Sometimes things like this, I like having that spatula underneath there because it gives me a nice little way to handle these without disturbing too much. But you can see then it's easy to really place that on there. Get it just in that right spot. Give it a tiny little press so it's really making contact and supported by that green. and just adjust however you want. But you can see that gives us a nice little trio of sunflowers, and that big one up there really kind of steals the show, and then you have those other little half open and bud style ones. So now that I've got that on there, I like the way it looks. It's going great. You can see those sepals hanging out from underneath. Even makes sense from the back. You can see it's kind of helping to support the flower. If you feel like it needs even more, don't be afraid to put more green up underneath there. Right, so just go underneath and pull out. It makes sense in the context of the type of flower it is, and it'll help support those blossoms even when things start to warm up. So I'm going to go ahead and keep working on the rest of my cake. So you can see we kept working and we finished off our 3D sunflower cake design. Very easy, simple 3 groupings of flowers were easy enough to do it because they're quite large and they take up some space. So it's an easy way to fill up those sides and make a really fun decorative design. If you enjoyed this 3D flower cake video, try checking out some of our other ones in this series or just some of our flower series videos where we show you how to pipe beautiful blossoms in detail. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like more about the cake decorating materials and equipment we use, or just some inspirational videos about cake decorating itself, you can follow us on Insta or YouTube at Cake Decorating School. If you'd like to know more about yearly membership and what it entails, you can go to www.cakedecoratingschool.com for more information. And if you're interested in these products, you can check the links in the description.